Hey everybody, and welcome back. The first of the greatest museums we're going to look at now is the Louvre in Paris. Dan Brown had nothing to do with it. The Louvre has been the world's idea of a great museum since long before the Da Vinci Code author was even born. In fact, while not the oldest museum in the world, Rome's Capitoline Museum claims that distinction, but this place has been open to visitors now for well over 200 years. It is certainly the most popular art museum in the entire world. Part of that attraction has to do with the architecture itself. This is, after all, the former home of French kings, even if Louis XIV hated the place so much that he moved out to the burbs in Versailles. But the building is magnificent. It's a series of royal residences built around some formal courtyards. It began as a medieval fortress. Then it was transformed into a Renaissance chateau by King Francois I. Later, the Tuileries Palace, 500 meters to the west, was added, as were others built by a succession of monarchs. Eventually, the various buildings were linked by corridors. The longest of these runs right alongside the Seine River for about half a kilometer. This place is really big. A key moment in the history of the Louvre, though, was the installation back in 1639 of the monumental Pavillon de l'Horloge, or Clock Pavilion, known now as the Pavillon Sully. Its tall, steeply pitched roof set the architectural style for later reconstruction and remodeling. By 1668, the architect Louis Le Vau, working for the Sun King Louis XIV, had constructed the Cour Carrée, or the Carré courtyard, and a new facade for the long riverfront corridor was there. By this time, the Louvre had begun now to take on the appearance that we recognize today. In 1672, the king then moved to Versailles, and the Louvre lost its role as a residence of French kings. But instead, it became the home to scholarly organizations such as the Académie Française and the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. The transformation towards museum then had begun at that point, but it wasn't until the French Revolution that this transformation reached its culmination with the opening in 1793 of the Palace of Musée Central des Arts. The original collection was largely composed of works appropriated from the defeated monarchy and from the church as well. This was greatly supplemented during the Napoleonic era. Emperors, of course, tend to be big collectors of art. A final major alteration to the museum's physical appearance was made in the late 20th century, when the American architect I.M. Pei designed a new underground lobby for the complex, spectacularly signposted by the construction of a glass pyramid, which, in its spare geometry, contrasts with the classical architecture, yet organizing the formal space of the vast forecourt. The Louvre, as we know it today, then, was complete. As grand as is the Palace of the Louvre, it is only a subtle foretaste, really, of the wonders that are inside the building. A serious student of art might allow several days, I think, just to go to the first appraisal. There are no less than 35,000 works of art in this museum. Now, given this daunting statistic, how is a mere mortal supposed to approach a first visit to the Louvre? Well, let's start by breaking down the collection by departments. These are Near Eastern antiquities, Islamic art, paintings, Egyptian antiquities, sculptures, prints and drawings, Greek, Etruscan, and Roman antiquities, and decorative arts. 8 departments might seem more manageable than 35,000 artworks, but each of these departments offers enough wonders for just days of exploration. The task still seems formidable at this point. Fortunately, the Louvre's website, louvre.fr, has a solution for you. Here, under the header of activities, you're going to find a series of self-guided tours that the museum calls thematic trails. Now, the smart traveler would do well to maybe spend a few hours exploring these trails online before the trip as kind of a fun and educational prelude to the actual time that you're going to spend in the museum. You'll find basic historical and artistic background on the collections, and you'll also find a guide to some of the key works there. Probably the thematic tour to start with is called Masterpieces of the Louvre Accessible Self-Guided Tour. Now, this is a 90-minute pathway that includes the 3 great ladies of the museum. One of these, of course, is going to be familiar to everybody. That's the Mona Lisa. The other 2 might require a little bit of an introduction. These are 2 fabulous statues from ancient Greece. You've got the Venus de Milo and the Winged Victory, or the Nike of Samothrace. The Venus, also known as the Aphrodite of Melos, dates from 100 BC. and has long been viewed, I think, as a paradigm of classical female grace, though in fact the statue was created long after the Golden Age of Athens. Another work from the same period, sometimes called the Hellenistic era, is the Winged Victory, which depicts the goddess of victory, Nike, landing on the prow of a ship to which she then offers her blessing. Partially reconstructed from fragments that were found on an island in the northern Aegean, this statue expresses the spectacular and expressive realism of the age that followed Alexander the Great. But the three great ladies aren't the only great ladies that you'll see on this tour. You'll also see Ingress, the famous Odalisque score reclining nude from 1814, and a fourth is perhaps the most famous female symbol ever created in France, Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People from 1831. This is an allegory symbolizing the hopes of the people in their attempt to restore the Republic during riots the year before. One of the other highlights of the French painting dates from 1819, Jericho, Raft of the Medusa. It's a dramatic and spectacular icon of Romanticism, depicting the survivors of a shipwreck still out afloat in a stormy sea. For Jericho, this painting represented the denunciation of a corrupt government, which had allowed an incompetent sea captain to take a post for which he was not qualified. For art lovers, this is really pure visual emotion. Note especially the limited range of color in this painting. This is a symphony of high contrast monochrome. Finally, this tour offers a rare opportunity to view a statue of Michelangelo outside of Italy. The Slave. It's an unfinished work, often thought to belong to a series familiar to visitors from the Accademia in Florence, home today also to Michelangelo's most famous statue, which of course is David. The Louvre is of course the most famous museum in Paris, but no visitor to the City of Lights will want to miss another museum which is just across the river. The Musée d'Orsay. It houses the world's greatest collection of French Impressionist masterpieces by painters like Monet, Renoir, Degas, and then post-Impressionists like Cézanne, Gauguin, and Van Gogh. A third world-class museum rates a mention as well in any discussion of art in Paris, and that's the Centre Pompidou, or the Pompidou Center in the city's modern art museum. It's housed in a landmark high-tech design by Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano. This is a treasury of 20th century works from Picasso and Matisse and Surrealists and others through 1965, as well as exhibitions which focus on contemporary artists. There is, besides all of this, some practical information we want to pass on to you about the museum as well. Keep in mind when you're at the museum, the rooms in the museum will start to close 30 minutes before the doors do. And admission to the permanent collection is free for everybody on the first Sunday of every month and on July 14th, which over there is a national holiday. We want to thank you for watching this segment of Great Museums by Professorit.com on the Louvre. I'm Rick Chambers.